Right, for more on the story, I'm joined by Eusebius McKaiser, a political analyst. So, Eusebius, a very raw picture painted by the former president of the ANC. What's your take on everything he said?
Well, it's a little bit rich coming from the former president of the ANC to be diagnosing his party, but to be above the fray, above the parapet. That's my problem with what he said, Shahan. He's right that, of course, the ANC must be honest and self-examine and say, we've made many mistakes, we'd like you to vote for us again, but here is our own self-diagnosis of problems with the party as well as with the South African state, which we are in charge of. But the question is whether the ANC has got the right solutions for the diagnosis that it keeps giving us. And what we get from former President Thabo Mbeki is an incomplete analysis of the state of the ANC and the state of the state. Because the truth of the matter is that this is a party that is bereft of ideas, it is morally bankrupt, it has not in fact, despite the resolution to that end at Mangaung, ushered in a decade of the cadre, and so the logical conclusion of what the president has said is that you shouldn't vote for the ANC because this ANC has been unable to demonstrate that it is able to deal with the problems that it has listed.
Yeah, never mind right solutions. What about the right people? Because that's the one question many South Africans will ask, right? Does the ANC have the right people?
No, you're absolutely spot on, and the answer is no, because we judge that by the scandals that we see that don't disappear. I mean, everyone would have thought that even the likes of Dr. Eusebius McKaiser must be the last person that will find himself embroiled in a scandal, but on the face of it, the investigative journalism over the last couple of days suggests that this man has got both ethical and legal questions to answer immediately. And of course, the same is true of many of the NEC members, other members of the top six over the years. And so whichever way you look at it, the truth of the matter is that ANC cadres are not fit to govern. And the ANC has taken many resolutions at elective conferences. I remember I was at Mangaung. One of the big outcomes there was the subsequent 10 years, which should by my calculation, come to an end next year, would be 10 years of crafting a new kind of ANC person in the branches that has ethical skills, that have technocratic skill, and when you combine ethics plus technocracy, that you can then unleash these cadres into the state, and eventually South Africans will enjoy a better life for all. I don't know about you, but all the main indices when it comes to unemployment, economic growth, levels of corruption, violent crime, all of those suggest that that hasn't happened. So it's a weird thing that former President Mbeki is asking you to do, Shahan. He wants you to give someone credit for admitting that they have stuffed up. Yeah. Why is that an argument for voting ANC?
Well, that's what they tried even with the fight against corruption, right? They issued this very sympathetic statement seeking this, I'm so sorry from the public, please give me a second chance. We keep hearing that from the ANC. We also keep hearing about organizational renewal, and the former president of the party is saying without that happening, that the major problems of our country will not be solved. Now, if I could say that word, I would say no, Sherlock, because that's quite obvious, isn't it?
It is obvious, but also the former president is an intellectual. He is engaging in empirical analysis. But if we look at the data, including when he was in charge of the country and of the party, not much happened by way of dealing with the structural injustices that we were bequeathed by history in 1994 and subsequently. Firstly, former President Thabo Mbeki was effectively the president in charge since 1994 because Madiba was really just ceremonially in charge. And then after that, of course, for 10 years, he was officially in charge. And the question has got to be asked to him, what did you do to ensure that you leave an organization intact that is in fact fit to govern? Because if he had done so, it would have been harder for Jacob Zuma to come along and to sell off the state assets to the highest bidder in the private sector. But the reason why Jacob Zuma was possible and the madness of the Zuma years could happen was precisely because at the point at which Mbeki exited the political stage, the ANC was already in grave trouble. So he needs to make sure that he also apologizes to the nation for his own agency or lack thereof in terms of how he exercised it when he was in the highest office. And secondly, one has got to ask him, what do you want us to do with the words renewal, organizational renewal? People in Alex can't eat organizational renewal. Those family members that are desperately out of work and you and I have to send remittances and our black tax go up, they can't eat organizational renewal. Those people, which is the whole country, that fear they will become victims of violent crime, they can't be kept safe because you have a pamphlet that says we commit ourselves to organizational renewal. The bottom line is very simple, Shahan. The ANC is actually better than the opposition parties at telling us what's wrong with itself. The former president is actually quite wrong. For many, many years, including the previous elections, not just in 2019, the ANC is always the first to tell you what it has done wrong. But the problem is that we can't give you a vote just because about your problems. You've got to earn the vote by showing us your track record in dealing with all the structural problems in society. And if we take that as the yardstick for whether or not to vote ANC, then the answer is no. There's no reason to vote ANC, and I don't see why you should vote for someone on the basis of them being honest about their stuff-ups.
Yeah, and lastly, let's talk about the politics at play, because this is where you come in very prominently in terms of unpacking what we're seeing happen. You have Thabo Mbeki go and tell the NEC previously that this party is on the verge of collapse. It's debated at an NEC meeting, and then afterwards the president, the current president, comes out and says this party is not on the verge of collapse. In fact, we are doing well on the ground. So what's happening there in terms of the political plays?
It's a very good question because, in a sense, you have this president giving a backhanded compliment or rather the former president giving a backhanded compliment to the current bunch by saying, yes, I finally have reason to campaign with you on our collective behalf as ANC cadres. On the other hand, he's also emasculating at the same time President Cyril Ramaphosa and the rest of the leadership by suggesting that over the last couple of years they've been playing marbles instead of actually self-examining honestly and getting on with the business of governing effectively. And in that sense, I wouldn't know what to make of the remarks of the president if I was part of the top-tier leadership of the ANC right now, because he's simultaneously saying there's a case for voting ANC, but at the same time, he's obviously also critiquing them. But the bottom line is that each successive ANC government has suffered from the same problem, which is that their policy prescriptions have been fundamentally decent. We can quibble here and there, but fundamentally okay. But as you have said, the one big hole has been the quality of leadership. That has been shoddy for too long. And the second problem, of course, is that the technical capacity of the state to deliver on the promissory note of the ANC policy resolutions have been very poor. And as long as that is the case, South Africans have got no one to vote for. The best reason to vote ANC is an embarrassing reason, and that is because the opposition is in a state of shambles.
Yeah, it's a sad reality, isn't it? I think your dog or your neighbor's dog's calling for your attention. I'm going to let you go. Thanks so much for the insight. I appreciate it. Political analyst Eusebius McKaiser. Still to come.